Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net doing my 11th site podcast. And just as promised in some of my other videos that I've done, I'm doing old school. I'm going old school again. And I wanted to thank everybody who checked out my last podcast about Jedi Knight and encouraged me to continue doing the old school type games. I mean, this was a product of this was my youth. I mean, I grew up back with the early PC games and stuff like that. That was like my childhood. That was like the golden years of my childhood. We're playing all these cool PC games, and to be perfectly honest, the heyday of PC probably ended sometime around, I don't know, 2002, 2003 or so. I came back in 2004, and then it stuck around until about 2006, 2007, and it's pretty much been gone ever since for the most part, and that's unfortunate. But what was so great about it was that there were just so many games. I mean, the PC was gaming back then, and one of the games that defined it was the Unreal series. Unreal first got released way back when. The first Unreal game, I think it was around 1998, 1999, or something like that. And it was for the PC. As far as I can remember, I have a copy of Unreal, or at least the gold version of Unreal, but I've never actually played through it. I've never beat it. I have played the opening, I have played the beginning, and a lot of people cite to the beginning of Unreal to be probably one of the best, just most interesting openings at the time, because it wasn't like it was another one of those games which opened up. It took a while before it gave you a weapon. You had a whole level where you were trying to escape this prison ship, and you were slowly trying to figure out while you're on it, why you're on it, what you're doing on it, how you get off of it. And at the end of the level, you have a lens when you're able to get off and you land on this alien world. It's a really cool opening. It's probably considered to be by many PC gaming purists probably one of the best openings of all time. But to me, the game just kind of got confusing after that. The open aspect of that next level kind of it was kind of intimidating, I guess you would say, for me. This was a long time ago, so but I certainly thought it was a step in a really awesome direction, and it did have multiplayer, but it was limited, and I think a lot of people were kind of just holding out. At least I was, and if I'm fairly certain, if I had Unreal at the time, I think that probably Unreal's successor had probably come out sooner. And of course, that was Unreal Tournament. In 1999, there was a major innovation for multiplayer. Multiplayer started to really revolutionize PC gaming because this was something that was being held over the consoles. The Dreamcast had not yet come out, and actually, the Dreamcast would ship with a modem simply because multiplayer was really starting to take off on the PC at that point. I mean, multiplayer had been in PCs ever since the days of probably the original Doom and stuff like that. But they were dealing with things like local networks and stuff like that. By the time Quake came out, I mean, it was pretty much no holds barred. The internet was here to stay, and everybody was using dial-up. So Quake 3 became pretty much a multiplayer only game, and Unreal Tournament became a multiplayer only game as well. Now, let me say that some of my best memories of PC multiplayer probably revolved around Unreal Tournament. That game to me defined an entire generation for a few reasons. I mean, we have our whole argument these days about Call of Duty and everything else, about Call of Duty versus Halo or Call of Duty versus Medal of Honor or just whatever other games are coming out. It's like back then it was Quake 3 or Unreal Tournament. That was the argument. That was how it was. And each person had, people were diehard purists about this. I mean, you either played Quake 3 or you played Unreal Tournament. I happen to have played both. But I specifically remember having some of the best multiplayer memories that I could possibly have had playing Unreal Tournament. Now, obviously this was a multiplayer game, so I can't really talk about the experience of me playing through a campaign or something like that. There was really nothing to talk about. But I can tell you probably one of my absolute favorite memories of all time. I used to work. I actually no back when I was in high school before I went off to college. I used to associate with some people in this group, and it was called the. You know what? I better not even say. Regardless, it was an open source user group. And the reason why I don't want to say is probably because I haven't heard from these guys in like probably like 7-8 years easy. I don't know where they are now. I just don't. I haven't done this in a long time, and I miss these guys badly. But they were an open source user group in my area, and they were Unreal. They were Linux guys basically, mostly Linux guys. But they were also gamers, and they had offices set up where they'd do Linux solutions and stuff like that for for private enterprise and other things. And every holiday, usually during Christmas time, um, they just have an Unreal Tournament night, and they'd switch over all the computers to a Red Hat distribution, which was on their network, and the computers loaded up a Red Hat distribution that had Unreal Tournament on it. And let me tell you something, these guys really knew how to party. And some of my favorite memories were of playing the game, and we played all different types of games. I think it was mostly capture the flag type games. And let me tell you something, that these teams were pretty well balanced. These guys were pretty good, and I was able to hold my own, at least for contribution to a decent team, to the teams. I could certainly contribute. I certainly could contribute, but I wasn't by any means a team star or anything like that. Um, the thing about Unreal Tournament was that Unreal Tournament's gameplay, when it came down to multiplayer, was fast paced, exciting, exhilarating, balanced, fair. It had some really, really, really good customization and stuff like that, and it actually could pretty much work on most of the PCs at the time. Um, so it was pretty cut. It was pretty cut and dry about like if you had a computer that you just bought, it would probably be able to run Unreal Tournament. And if you had a bunch of them together, I mean, this started the LAN party revolution. The LAN party revolution was really starting to was really in its own, or coming into its own about this time. I mean, I don't think they were the absolute start of the LAN party, but I can definitely say that there's no doubt about it that there was a lot of productivity probably lost by people playing these games after hours at offices and stuff like that. And these guys would also play movies in the background and stuff like that. God, what do I remember them playing? I remember them playing Blade. I remember them playing Tron. I had never seen Tron before, and they were playing it. Yeah, it was just a great. They had a projection system with surround sound, so they play the movies. I said, could you run a spectator like if you had that all set up? And he's like, yeah, but it was making everybody nauseous, so we stopped doing it. But they said they actually could run a spectator if they wanted to on that. But I thought that was really awesome. And yeah, there was some StarCraft players. Some people would play StarCraft also. Um, but those were probably some of my best memories. And just to be nice to everybody, I'd buy coffee for everyone, or I'd buy donuts and bagels for everyone, and I'd bring those. It was never asked or requested of me to do that sort of thing, but the guys were just so nice and so generous and everything else. I do that for everyone. I also remember for the first time ever having to explain what it was that we were doing to someone who had no idea, because one of the owner's fathers was attending the party, and he wasn't playing. He had no idea what everyone was doing. So I basically came up with the first ever explanation for what we were doing, what a LAN was, or what the objective of LAN was. And I remember using this description to this older gentleman, and I said, "Well, imagine a battlefield somewhere, anywhere. But the thing about this battlefield is that the soldiers on the battlefield are not actually soldiers. They are the virtual representations of someone controlling them from the other side of the computer screen." And he understood that. It seemed like he understood that. Because that's really, I mean, in a nutshell, what a game, what multiplayer gaming is. I mean, you basically got some kind of, you got a virtual battlefield, and you've got players on, you've got warriors on this battlefield, but they're not really warriors. They're characters that are being controlled either from a person on the other end of a computer or other end of a console holding a controller, basically. But that's basically it, and he understood that, and even the guy thought it was a cool explanation. And so that was what was going on with Unreal Tournament. Now years passed, and I think that there for a couple of years didn't seem to be like a major step in like gaming. Probably around 2002, certainly the console started to take over, and even though Xbox Live and stuff like that had not yet come out, and fairly certain it wasn't out yet by that point. Um, Epic announced that they were doing a new Unreal game, and they said it was going to be called Unreal Tournament 2003. And because the reason why they were doing it was because they were going up for a naming convention. They had just had announced sometime earlier that they were doing they had released an Unreal 2 engine that and it was quite groundbreaking. It was a major improvement over what they had already done, and it had one hell of a net code and much better graphics and much better visual possibilities that blew a lot of stuff out of the water. And the U.S. military was looking at it, and just a whole lot of organizations were looking at it because Unreal Tournament engine was just so powerful that people were really looking to upgrade to this new engine, this Unreal Engine 2. Even the guys who were making Duke Nukem Forever were looking at it. And what happened was that they announced that Unreal Tournament 3 Unreal Tournament 2003 was going to be pretty much a multiplayer client, just like the original Unreal Tournament game was. And that it was going to be designed from the ground up for multiplayer. I thought universally that this was awesome. And not only that, but that there was going to be a demo. And I think that there was probably easy to say that when that demo got announced, there was a lot of anticipation for that demo. Probably one of the most anticipated demos at the time. And it was basically, it was like just a few multiplayer levels and stuff like that. But it was going to come out before the game, a couple weeks before the game came out. And I remember that there was this guy who was running the site PlanetUnreal.com, which no longer exists, who did a really, really funny flash video about Mark Rain and everything, where he was like, "Is it out yet? Is it out yet?" And Mark Rain is like, and Mark and it was like the worst animated thing you've ever seen. Like but it was just so corny about this guy hestering Mark Rain about the demo. And because he's like, it's downloading, installing, engage. This is the best day of my life. That was literally what was in the audio clip. If anybody can find that video, if that video still exists somewhere, please link it to me. Or if you were the guy, I think it was created by this guy named Fragmaster. I can't remember what happened to Fragmaster, but I think it was Fragmaster who did it. And if I remember correctly, Fragmaster also did some Half-Life 2 videos, actually, just before when Half-Life 2 got delayed and everything else. Don't know really what happens to the guy, but probably, it was probably done, the videos were done with MS Paint and animated by hand or whatever, but it was pretty funny Flash videos. And that was what happened with them. The demo came out. And I had just upgraded my computer. We were using the GeForce 4 at the time. And I had the tie. And, oh my God. Like, it was just amazing. I just couldn't believe it. It was just amazing. The gameplay was much faster than the original Unreal Tournament. The graphics were much better. They still ran fantastic speeds and stuff like that on decent hardware. It was great. It was great. And the final version of the game hadn't come out, but Epic had also announced that there was going to be an Unreal 2 game that was going to be a sequel to the first Unreal game, obviously, which was going to be a single player game. But the thing about it was that it was going to be single player only. They said it would not have a multiplayer client. If you wanted a multiplayer client, you'd have to basically play Unreal Tournament 2003. And that rubbed a few people the wrong way. So what eventually happened was that Unreal Tournament 2000, I remember specifically that UT 2003 had not come out yet, and I remembered moving across the country to go to school, and I don't know if I want to say exactly where I went because I hate these guys. Let me phrase this. I hated the school. So I won't exactly say where I went. Because for all I know, just somebody's gonna sue me for saying that. But so yeah, I was just moving across the country to schools. I was going into the dorms, and at first it seemed like there was a pretty good bunch of guys that were on the floor and stuff like that, on my dorm floor. I mean, and we started, and I'm like, maybe for like a first week bonding experience, we could all play Unreal Tournament 2003 demos. Everybody had high powered rigs, and we all, that's how we bonded basically, was by playing that game. Like I said, the full version hadn't come out yet, so we had no problem playing the demo, and it was a fun experience. The downside was that my rig had actually gotten badly damaged during the transportation, during the cross country transportation. And my graphics card, my very expensive graphics card, had fried, and it took me a couple weeks to determine that was where the problem was. But my computer actually went down for quite a while as I tried to determine how the computer had broken, and I finally determined that the graphics card had obviously broken during transport. By the time I figured that out, I basically had my folks ship me a spare, like an old one, just to keep the thing on life support until I could buy a replacement, and they did, and it turned out the old one worked, but I couldn't get the good graphics at that point anymore. Other than this, I couldn't get the high resolutions and the decent frame rates anymore. I had to replace the card, but it was good. It was fine. I fixed it and got a new graphics card. And that was the end of that. But eventually the game did come out, and I picked it up, and I remembered loving it. I also picked up Unreal 2 later on, which was a single-player game. And I kind of thought that it was interesting what they were going for with Unreal 2. Like, they were kind of telling, like, a side story about what was going on, but it was trying to show, like, it was in the same universe. But the thing was that the Unreal universe was so big that it seemed like they were trying their best to kind of show something that was not involved with the tournaments. So you had things like you had very few appearances of like the Scar, for example, and in fact they actually made it intentional to show the Scar immediately because they knew that was a staple of the series. But the truth was the Scar really didn't appear that much in the game in Unreal 2. Like I said, there was also no multiplayer, and other than the training mission, the training levels, which were optional, there really didn't seem to be any type of major like deathmatch or anything like that. It just didn't capture the same feel. It was still a good game in its own respect. It had fantastic graphics for the time, but there was just nothing in it that really screamed Unreal. And the ending was awful. The ending was a complete downer. Very, very just terrible ending. Very sad. I mean, just awful. And that was that. I mean, it really felt like after all of that, you had accomplished nothing. In fact, you had actually accomplished terrible. It was like, so that was disappointing. But Unreal Tournament 2003 was fantastic, and I think that was kind of the game that elevated a lot of multiplayer to kind of just go back to the PC, because by that point, Xbox Live had just released. Unreal Championship had come out for the original Xbox, and that had shipped along with Xbox Live. It was actually a launch title for Xbox Live service. And be perfectly honest, the first Unreal Championship game was pretty much Unreal Tournament 2003. That was it. It was a kind of similar maps, and they later released more maps from the same maps to for download through Xbox Live Service. It had the multiplayer, it had the cross voice chat and stuff like that. But it was basically Unreal Tournament 2003 for the console, for the Xbox console. So if you played Unreal Championship 1, you pretty much got that. Other things. Other things. Let's see. Well, around that time, Unreal 2 kind of was still in there. I honestly think that the major problem with Unreal 2 was at the time, Unreal 2 just came out around the same time as Unreal 2003, and they were both $50 at launch, which, by the way, was the regular price for PC games. I admit that. PC games have always really been $50 when they came out. But when you had two games, like you had one game that was considered to be a single player component and like the other game considered a multiplayer component, people pretty much just bought the Unreal Tournament 2003 game, and Unreal 2 really didn't sell that much. At least I don't think it did. It might have sold moderately successful, but I honestly, like I said, I didn't think it was that good a game. But like I said, it had pretty graphics. So basically, the game got patched with multiplayer. Actually, they actually added a multiplayer patch to it, and I remember beta testing it on Atari's website, and it was fantastic. I mean, a lot of people, especially I remember the Penny Arcade guys, were going crazy for this. It was pretty much they didn't replicate things like deathmatch. They didn't replicate things like capture the flag. This was almost like a gameplay segment that kind of kind of became a later staple of the Unreal games. They were going for something new, and they really seemed to conquer it. You had vehicles. You had, it was basically about vehicles and territory capture and stuff like that. You had these nodes you had to capture, and you were using vehicles to capture them. The objective was not to kill everybody and get the high score, or to capture a flag and get a high score, but to capture an entire large zone with lots of people. And you had vehicles, tanks, ATVs, all that sort of stuff. It was awesome when you think about it. It was awesome. The coolest part about it was that, like I said, it was free. It was released for free. And one or two later re-releases of Unreal 2 actually included the client along with it. But they did patch it for free for anybody that had Unreal 2. The problem was that it had come so late after Unreal 2 had come out. No matter how good it was, it had just taken so long to come out. It had come out so late that by that point nobody was really interested in it anymore. I mean, the people that bought the clients and stuff like that bought the games that had it out of the box, they were good. But the client was a very big patch in multiplayer. It took a long time to download on the, if you didn't have a high-speed internet connection, which a lot of people didn't. And by that point, other games had come out, and the PC users had kind of shifted their attention to other games. In particular, Epic had announced that there was going to be a new Unreal Tournament game, and it was going to be called Unreal Tournament 2004. A lot of people cried foul about this one. Now you're probably asking yourself, why? Well, they basically, they said with Unreal Tournament 2003, they were going to be going for a new type of gameplay in that that they were going to be going for an annual game release, similar to Madden or something like that. But the thing was like, this wasn't a sports game. This was a a core staple of the of the PC gaming industry, a core franchise, and people believed, and this was true at the time. I know people are going to laugh at this right now, that having a yearly release for the games of the same franchise was almost like you were milking the franchise for all it was worth. Wow, how opinions have changed since then. People were very much against that, actually, because then they were like, look, you're telling me I'm going to be paying $50 a year for pretty much the same game every year? No! I'm going to let that sink into you guys and just mention that. Just let that sink in for a second. So the cool thing about Unreal Tournament 2004 was that actually there were a few cool things about it. In particular, they decided that they wanted this to be considered a logical upgrade from Unreal Tournament 2003 and not a separate game. So anybody who pretty much had Unreal Tournament 2003 and paid that money for it, they were going to offer them like a $10 rebate or $5 rebate or something like that. They also didn't charge full price for the game. They did two releases for it. They did a regular edition release of the game, which cost, I believe, what was it? Cost $30, which was a pretty good deal. And they also decided to do a collector's edition for the PC, which were pretty rare at the time in 2004, 2003. They really, very few games were doing collector's editions at the time. And and they basically, what made a collector's edition was they included a bonus disc, and it was shipped in a DVD case. And what was the other thing? It came with a headset. Like they included a PC headset with it. Wow, how things have changed with a microphone. They included a microphone headset. It also came with an extra bonus disc about the Unreal series and just other cool stuff. So it was a cool disc. It was a cool collector's edition. They GameStop also, I believe, had a rebate as well, and but it was a store credit rebate, I think, maybe. I think they gave out like $10 gift cards or something with it. No, not gift cards, like coupons, $10 coupons, but it's pretty much the same thing. And the other one was, I think they came out with like this Unreal sticker or something like that, which I used to keep attached on my PC, my older PC. That having been said, Unreal Tournament 2004 improved on Unreal Tournament 2003 in pretty much every respect. It had more game modes, it had more maps, it had the same maps from Unreal Tournament 2003. So again, like the upgrade, it definitely had the upgrade feel to it. It just was awesome, and it came in at really the perfect time because this was just in the heyday of LAN centers and stuff like that, really starting to come into their own. It didn't last very long, but there was a boom at the time that was just amazing, where LAN centers were starting to take off. You had all these cyber cafes and stuff like this that were starting to spring up, and here you had Unreal Tournament 2004 to practically be its staple game. You could, big things. I remember in Boston at the time. I remember, like I said, I had a friend that lived in Boston at the time. By this point I was back. I was back here. I had left the school and transferred because I did not like the school. So I'd come home. I was visiting my friend in Boston occasionally. My friend went to school in Boston at the time. And what had happened was that I was visiting LAN centers, and yes, they were serving the ball soda, which was awesome. This was a place where I used to basically be the only places I could get balls was actually at LAN centers and stuff like that. It was great. And I'd have the balls and play and pay a few hours for like Unreal Tournament on some good rigs and stuff like that. I also remembered, and for those of you who have seen my video, Small Town Geek Bar, which was kind of like a parody of someone's movie, a documentary that was made by Malcolm Ingram. I was actually doing Small Town Geek Bar. Small Town Geek Bar was an honest story. I was not making that story up. I wasn't even slightly exaggerating about it. That place did exist. It was another place, another LAN center that had opened up locally here. And that used to be my hangout back then. I used to go and play Unreal Tournament 2004 over there. And then later on that year, play Half-Life 2 and Counter-Strike Source and stuff like that. And I remember some players came over and they were playing like Halo 2 and stuff like that on their Xbox and stuff. So there was a few options. They had like a few options for games and stuff like that. But the problem was by the end of that year, most of these centers had busted. The problem was that they cost a lot to set up all these expensive computers and stuff like that. So the overhead was very high, especially when it came down to site licenses for Steam and stuff like that. it was just very expensive to operate. They to a LAN center, and charging like $10 per hour or something like that, or charging $5 an hour just wasn't enough. I mean, even with markup prices of drinks and stuff like that, it just wasn't sustainable. And a lot of these LAN centers that were great, I used to go not to play games, but just to socially interact with people. Um, which is, I think, the same reason why a lot of people will go to bars. They don't go to bars just to drink. I mean, you can drink at home if you wanted to. You go to for the social interaction, and that's why I would go. And then all the LAN centers closed, and since then, I really haven't had any. I can't honestly think of any real social interaction places. Nowadays, I guess you would consider the conventions to be that kind of place. I also, speaking of conventions, remember going to the UberCon. And Nvidia was one of the sponsors of the UberCon. That was like, I think the only time I went to the UberCon was, I think it was UberCon 2004 or something like that. Haven't been there since, but I did get my first and only 20-sided die actually from the gift bag actually at the UberCon. The part of the gift bag, the swag bag, if you will, was the 20-sided dice. And I remembered going, and Nvidia was sponsoring that system, and there was an Unreal Tournament 2004 tournament there. I didn't place very high in it. I think I only placed about maybe top 11 or something like that. My friend placed higher than me, but they did not win overall. It was fun though. It was fun. Never went back. But that was the first time I ever met the Penny Arcade guys. That was the first time Penny Arcade guys ever came to the East Coast. Was for that convention, and I remember definitely that was one thing we did was we did it. We had an Unreal Tournament 2004 tourney, and it was a lot of fun. I also remember that summer going to another LAN party, and this was, I think, the last LAN party I ever attended that I didn't host, at least for PC. That a bunch of people had rented out a club, like a music club. It might have been the owners of the club, for all I know. It was this place called The Space, and Balls was sponsoring it. And we brought a friend of mine. We brought our rigs to this event, and we were playing Unreal Tournament 2004. And actually, I remember winning that tournament, winning many of those maps. In fact, actually, I remember that a lot of the players there, really nice guys, actually, really fun guys. Were not listening to me about when you had the amount of players we did, and we had plenty. I think we had like 30 players for that tournament. They wanted to do the really, really, really small maps, and I said, fine, but I'm gonna win them. It's like when you have that many players, all you gotta do is just grab a chain gun, hold down the trigger button, and you'll win. And that's exactly what happened. I won that game by a lot. They wanted to do like a 30-person game on training day, I think it was, for UT 2004. And let me tell you, you pick up a chain gun and you just hold down, you're gonna hit something. And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. That was, I think, the last LAN party I ever went to for the PC that I didn't hold myself. Very sad, actually, when you think about it. But if anybody knows any more, I'd love for them to notify me, because I can't think of anybody that has them in my area or anywhere close. I can't even think of any LAN centers in my area. So after all of that, everybody, Unreal Tournament slowly became like a staple pretty much of the PC gaming industry. It became a very long played game. Everyone I know had a copy. Everybody I know always considered it a staple game. And then in 2004, Epic announced that they were going to do Unreal Engine 3. And I remember at that year's E3, that was the second E3 I ever attended, was was E3 in 2004. And it was a blast. It really was. And I remembered the Nvidia booth was showing off the very first excerpts of what the technology was that was going to become Unreal Engine 3. And the stuff that they were demoing at the time was kind of the technology that would go into Gears of War, for example, which Gears of War was another 2 years away. In fact, it hadn't even been announced. It was going to be Unreal Warfare at the time. What was going on with it was that, but that was the first technology, and the thing about it was that it was so unbearably powerful that it required pretty much NVIDIA graphics cards, like the most powerful NVIDIA. It required actually two of the most powerful graphics cards NVIDIA had made to run it, and to run it at all, and that's why NVIDIA hosted it. ATI didn't have the Crossfire technology at the time. SLI had just come out, and in fact, I don't even think those graphics cards had even been released yet by NVIDIA. But yeah, that was why you had that. That was basically that. NVIDIA stuff was the only people that could do it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you probably weren't a PC gamer back in the day. But that's no slam on you guys. Nowadays, ATI, NVIDIA, that whole thing is pretty much ended because it seems like a lot of the major PC stuff is all pretty much console. Is all pretty much going to the consoles. But back then, it used to be that there was only two graphics cards manufacturers, and it was either NVIDIA or it was ATI. ATI basically got bought by AMD, and NVIDIA stayed independent. And since then, pretty much NVIDIA has claimed they won because when ATI got bought by AMD, that was it, And NVIDIA has not sold to Intel. They don't intend to sell to. They thought about it for. They said they thought about it for a while, but they didn't. They promised that they will continue to support both AMD's technology and Intel's technology, but they were going to remain independent. Again, that was not a necessary spiel, but that was pretty much what was going on in the gaming industry at the time. So Epic pretty much focuses and starts to focus on Gears of War, and I think a lot of people were very interested in Gears of War, not just because it looked awesome when it was first demoed and previewed by Cliff Bleszinski and stuff like that, but I think a lot of people were interested in Gears of War because of the Unreal Tournament. These were the guys that made Unreal Tournament. What actually happened was that when Gears of War came out, they became Epic became the Gears of War guys as opposed to the Unreal Tournament guys. And when they finally announced that they were going to make an Unreal game with the Unreal technology, actually a lot of people were claiming, it's like, you made this game engine, it's called the Unreal Engine, are you going to make an Unreal 3 with it? And they said, yeah, they were making a new project with it that was going to take place in the Unreal universe. It was called Envy at the time. And this was 2006, 2007, just about. They were really talking about, they said it was going to come to the PC, it was going to use the Unreal Engine 3, and it was going to be an Unreal game. But they didn't say at first what it was. A lot of people said, well, is this going to be Unreal 3? Is this going to be a sequel to Unreal 2? And then they said, no, this is going to be an Unreal Tournament game. This is not going to be Unreal 3, this is going to be Unreal Tournament 3, which at the time it was actually called Unreal Tournament 2007. They changed that to Unreal Tournament 3, but then again, when you even think about that, doesn't that make that technically Unreal Tournament 4? No, I guess they considered Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004 the same game. So, it was Unreal Tournament 3. They were going to call it 2007, they called it 3. And then, in all the previews for Unreal Tournament 3, they were showing off the new technology, and they're saying, from the studio who brought you Gears of War. It's like, no, it was the studio that brought us Unreal Tournament. So here you had this technology, and not only that, but they were also giving not just an incredible multiplayer client, but also an incredible single-player story as well. Because they said it's like they had gotten such popularity with the single-player component for Gears of War, was that they were actually going to ship Unreal Tournament 3 with a multiplayer and a single-player. Now, the cool thing I liked so much about Unreal Tournament 3 was that the graphics were, again, just absolutely phenomenal. Probably some of the best the PC had seen at the time. And the other thing was that it actually ran really well. And I had a pretty lean graphics card at the time. It was still, it still supported Shader Model 3 and Shader Model 4 and stuff like that. But it was still a lean card. And it impressed me tremendously. It ran fantastically on my system. I was able to play. I played through the whole. In fact, I remember playing through the whole single-player campaign actually with that game, and loving every second of it pretty much. Then what happened was that they started also releasing it on other platforms. They became the I think the first game to ever allow. They also released at the same time the Unreal Tournament 3 for the PlayStation 3. And actually, they had a feature setting in the PlayStation 3 that you could actually build maps on the PC using the Unreal 3 editor. Um, Run it through a conversion software program, which was not yet released. It took a few days or a few weeks or something for the converter to be released to the PC. And they released. Then it basically you could port it over and you could put your maps on your PlayStation using a USB memory stick or something, which was considered actually to be pretty darn good. And they were talking about things like user content and stuff like that as being a big thing because user content was always a huge thing about the Unreal Engine. The other thing was that a lot of people were hoping and claiming that because Unreal 3 was not yet released on the Xbox 360. That was a huge platform for Epic fans. Also, remember that the Unreal Championship games, there was a second Unreal Championship game that was released to the Xbox. It was an Xbox exclusive, but it was actually, ironically enough, not a port of anything. It was its own game, and I think it came out around the time of the end of the Xbox's life cycle. And they also brought in stuff like the possibility of melee attacks and stuff like that. Third-party perspectives. I'm sorry, not third-party. Third-person perspectives on the games. Melee attacks, new maps, and actually a pretty cool storyline about the tournament and stuff like that. Unreal Championship 2 had a pretty cool storyline. It also had some very difficult unlocks and stuff like that to do for characters and stuff like that. But it was still a fun game. And it actually, as far as I could tell, was probably the first direct sequel to the Unreal Tournament games because it referenced things in the earlier Unreal Tournament games. Actually, like things like what happened to Brock and what happened to Lauren and what happened to Malcolm and stuff like that. Then what happened was that so like I said, it had a really good story, and then what happened was that Unreal 3 comes out a couple of years later. I'm sorry, I was sidetracking myself, but I actually remembered I forgot to talk about Unreal Championship 2. That was actually important because, and again, it was another staple of the Xbox platform. Of the Xbox Live platform and DLC and everything else. So after all of that, and fast forward back to it, Unreal Tournament 3 came out for the Xbox 360 finally. And there was a few problems with it. In particular, there was problems with the disc and stuff like that. They couldn't get all the maps they wanted to on the other platforms because of disc constraints and stuff like that. So they announced that there was going to be they were just going to have the extra maps be like DLC or something like that. They could release it that way. And I think that kind of made a lot of people. Most people were fine with that. But then a problem came out where they finally decided that they were going to revamp and relaunch. With like a 2.0 patch, basically, Unreal Tournament 3. And the thing about it was going to turn into the Black Edition. And the first ways that they did it was they released the patch through Steam, actually. And it was one of the first non-Valve games, I think Prey was the first, but it was one of the first non-Valve games to actually allow, which already had a non-Steam required client, to actually register your CD key through Steam and get the game through Steam without the need of the CD, or download or install through the CD. And that was, I think, the first way you could install the Black Edition. That's what they called it, the Black Edition patch, which brought in things like Steam achievements and new maps and stuff like that. They also brought that Black Edition to the Xbox. I'm sorry, the PlayStation 3 version because they could get away with doing that through like the PlayStation Marketplace or something like that. I'm sorry, the PlayStation Store. And they added in things like I think they might have added in the trophy support. I don't know exactly, but they did patch it into Unreal Tournament 3 for the Xbox 3. I'm sorry for the PlayStation 3 version. But they did not patch it for the Xbox 360 version. The Xbox 360 version remained unpatched, and they said the reason why they couldn't do it was because of patch size limitations on the Xbox Live service. You couldn't get, there was only so big a patch you could actually release through Xbox Live. That was their policies. I think the maximum was somewhere around 2 megs, maybe 4 megs at the most. They couldn't do it. So that was a problem. But it came on the PC, and it got on the PlayStation Network. And to be perfectly honest, since then we really haven't heard from Unreal Tournament. Now, I know that Unreal Tournament 3 was, I think, pretty popular. It's still probably a staple of the PC gaming industry, but I think a lot of focus have shifted away from the PC. Or at the very least has shifted from the PC to more multi-platform or spread across the multi-platforms. The PC, the Xbox 360, and the PlayStation 3. All releases nowadays are certainly, multi-platform releases. Although I would consider Unreal Tournament 3 to probably be like the last of that. I think PC gaming I think people really started shifting over to the consoles when BioShock came out. I think that BioShock was like the last gasp of PC gaming that year because of two reasons. One, a lot of people were angry about the system requirements of BioShock, and the other thing was BioShock required online DRM activation, and nobody was going to be, I know a lot of people that were multi-platform that were going to say, why am I limited to 3 installs on this PC game when I could play it as much as I wanted on the console version? I'll buy the freaking console version, and I won't have to deal with it. And I've felt that way ever since. I don't buy, because of that nonsense. Steam I consider separately. Steam I don't hold in that respect because I like this extra the Steam features and stuff like that. That's why I chose to use the Steam version of Unreal Tournament 3, but I didn't have to pay any extra for it. It was included with the disc version. It was like all I do was register the CD key, and I had the Steam. I prefer to play the Steam version because the Steam version came already patched and stuff like that. So after boring you guys with all of those stories and all that spiel, where do I think the Unreal game series is going to be going? Well, I know for a fact, I don't know for a fact, but I've been hearing musings that Epic has pretty much been well at hand with making Unreal Engine 4. And, Epic has been, don't get me wrong, Epic has been plowing away at Unreal Engine 3 since, heck, after they released Unreal Engine 3, they were already in the process of improving it. Pretty much every Gears of War release has been a staple of the Unreal Engines, or new Unreal Engines, stuff like that. In fact, actually, the PC version of Gears of War actually used, I think, a similar engine to what Gears of War 2 had as opposed to Gears of War 1 on the Xbox. And that was the reason why they couldn't release the extra levels that they put on the PC to the Xbox 360 version of the original Gears of War because the engines weren't compatible by that point. They had broken compatibility. They couldn't just simply release it as DLC. It just didn't work. So my hope is that with a new Unreal Engine, we're going to see a new Unreal Tournament. Obviously, I'm fairly certain we're going to see it. It's like I don't think they're going to end, Gears of War with Gears of War 3. I'm sure that either that or Epic is just going to talk about creating a whole new franchise. But I think that Unreal is still a staple franchise of gaming. It holds a major pedigree. We haven't seen an Unreal game since Unreal Tournament 3 came out, as far as I can remember. And that was in 06. I'm sorry, that was in 07. It's been a while. It's been a long while. I'd love to see an Unreal 3 or an Unreal Tournament 4 or something like that. I'd play it. I really would. So, Epic. Get on that, I guess. I don't know what else to tell you. It's just, like I said, it's just been a staple of my life, and those are just some of the stories that I have about, just fantastic game series. I know I talked a little bit more about my own personal stories and my own personal memories about Unreal and stuff like that than just give like a history lesson on the Unreal franchise and stuff like that. But I mean, this is a podcast about my memories and stuff like that, and my best memories. So there was that too. So I want to hear your comments about this podcast. What do you think? What'd you think of it? What'd you think of Unreal? Um, I have had more requests to do more old classic PC gaming franchises for podcasts. I don't know what I'll do next. Um, I kind of would prefer. I have a few options certainly, even if it's old school PC. I have a few options still. Um, but I yet I don't want to nail down a definitive release yet. Just yet. For my next podcast. But I'd like to hear your comments about this. It's a great series. I hope that there's going to be a new release soon. I know, like I said, there's probably going to, I think that Unreal Engine 4 is probably, I think they were talking about that. Don't know what's going on with it yet. It's probably meant for like much advanced technology back around the time that Unreal Engine 3 came out. It was just too powerful when they announced it. It was intended for stuff that was going to be next level PC stuff, next level consoles. So there was all that. I'd like to thank you guys again for listening. And I just want to say again, if you want me to talk about what you want me to do a video about next or a podcast about next, please post a comment. So until next time, guys, this is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Take care. Over and out. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.